And we have no minutes. Those are delayed.
They'll be at your next meeting.
Okay. No new business. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, then tonight we will be having a public hearing. It's a request for conditional use and design review approval for a senior living and memory care facility with 102 beds and 4 independent living duplexes with associated parking and site improvements. That's DR 20-03 and CUP 20-02 memory care facility. So this matter before us tonight requires a public hearing, and all questions must be directed through the chair. Any evidence must be submitted to the hearing body for public access. All written testimony received before, both for and against, shall be summarized by staff and presented briefly to the hearing body during the staff report. Testimony and evidence must be directed through the applicable review criteria contained in the staff report, the comprehensive plan, or other land use regulations which the person believes to apply to the decision. Failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the decision maker and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issue may preclude appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals based on that issue. So at this time, I would ask that any member of the hearing body who has a conflict of interest, please indicate the nature and extent of the conflict and whether you intend to participate in or abstain from hearing the present matter. Okay, hearing none. Also, if any member of the hearing body has had any ex parte contact with anyone prior to this hearing, excuse me, including a visit to the site, please declare the nature and extent of such contact at this time. Okay.
Commissioner Savory, this is Commissioner Boatwright.
Yes.
I live in the neighborhood over here off of 13th and drive by it continuously. And my son-in-law at one time rented that lot for his business, but I have no concerns about that whatsoever if you guys don't.
I do not. So let's see. Okay, the public hearing will be conducted as follows. First, we'll have the staff report. Thank you, Larry. Then there will be questions, if any, by the commissioners. Then we will open the public hearing for testimony. First will be the applicant, and then we will have other proponents, and then we will have opponents, and then rebuttal by the applicant if necessary. I will then close the public hearing. There will be any more questions, and then a decision shall be made by the hearing body at the close of the hearing, or the matter will be continued to a date certain in the future. This will be the only notice of that date you will receive. Any questions? Okay, let's proceed. So who is going to be giving the staff report this evening?
That would be me, Brianna Adata, Associate Planner. Hello.
Hello, Brianna. How are you?
Good, thank you very much.
Good.
Lainey, should I share my PowerPoint?
Yes, please.
Thank you. Give me just 1 second. Okay, everyone see here? Okay. All right. Let me skip past these. I should have brought it up sooner. Here we go. All right. As Chair Savoy said, we are here to discuss the memory care facility design review and conditional use permit for the facility at 13th and Ivy. Here is a list of the applicable criteria. Pretty standard for the design review, but things we want to point out for the conditional uses are signage considerations are going to be particular to the conditional use, and we'll discuss that. Okay, so existing conditions. There's a 2.6 acre parcel on the southeast corner of South Ivy Street and Southeast 13th Avenue. It has 2 existing driveways, a single family home that I believe is unoccupied, and a storage structure on it. It's otherwise undeveloped. And this particular parcel was previously designated as Special Area K. Special Area K was a designation given in the comp plan in 2003 as part of a buildable lands inventory designation, allowing a holding zone of CR to be placed over the primary zoning as an overlay. This was done to reduce the perceived risk of applying for an official rezone to CR to encourage developers to consider the lot. And specifically, the report called out a residential commercial use or a well-designed convenience store. That's what they thought would be most appropriate at the time. That, of course, is not an exclusive list. There were previous proposals for the property. They went through various stages of the process. None of them were approved, and the parcel was never officially rezoned. And Ordinance 1514 in 2019 actually removed Special Area K from the comp plan, so this no longer applies. But I did want to give that history because I think that the people who live in the area do know the history as well. Okay, so here is our bearings. You can see the lot here in blue, right in the center. To the north, we have Canby Swim and Adult Centers, as well as the Ackerman Middle School. To the northwest, we have single family residential. Immediately to the west, we have Hope Village, a senior living and assisted living facility. Immediately to the south, we have a retail establishment. It's a chocolate shop. I bet you guys are familiar. And then to the southeast, we have more single family residential. So the applications specifically that we're considering tonight are the conditional use application, and that is for the nursing home use in an R1 zone, which is a low density residential zone. And the design review type 3, it's a type 3, which means it's discretionary and has to come to you because there is going to be a large new structure, a parking reduction request, and access spacing considerations. Okay, to get into the details of the project. There's going to be one facility that's 2 stories with 102 memory care resident beds. That is 2 beds per room. And then there are also going to be 8 units of senior independent living. And those will be 4 duplexes, each with their own 1-car garage and driveway. The plan wants to retain both driveways, obviously improve them, but retain both accesses. They are proposing 31% landscaping and 60 parking spaces. Here is a site plan. I will just stay on this for one moment to give everyone their bearings here. We have Ivy Street and 13th. We're in the southeast corner. And as you can see, the senior duplexes are on the east side of the property. The primary facility is in the center and towards the rear of the property with parking surrounding. Here are the elevations of the memory care building. This is the primary facility. You can see even though the building is larger than what a residential home would be, the design is a residential consideration, and the materials are similar to what is used in the area. There's varying materials. They do meet all of the residential design standards in terms of things like materials, spacing. The design elements are all here. Oh, and we have the main entry in the corner. I wanted to point that out as well. This main entry with the large arch that will kind of point towards the intersection. It's oriented towards the intersection. Here are some renderings. Again, there's a good show of the entrance there. This is the other side going down Ivy. Okay, and now onto the independent living duplexes. There's 8 total units. They're all 1 story. They're approximately 600 square feet with a 200 square foot garage. They each have a shared driveway, so they have 2 parking spots total each. And there is a 15-foot rear setback applied here because there is residential to the east of them. Here's the landscape plan. As I mentioned before, they were required to do 30% landscaping. They're providing 31%. 15% of that needed to be in the parking lot, and they are proposing 28% to be in the parking lot. And you can see they have a lot of different vegetation here, and they've included street trees as well, which I always appreciate. Okay. So discussing the consistency with criteria for this project. So in terms of zoning, the R1 zone allows nursing homes as a conditional use. The site design meets R1 standards. The primary building will be 37 feet tall, so 2 feet over the R1 standard, but it does adhere to the conditional use step-up standard, which means if you can increase your setbacks from property lines, you can go a certain number of feet up. So that's what they did for the 2-foot increase. Their landscape, once again, over the minimum requirements. Outdoor lighting. So the lighting zone 1 is typical for R1 parcels, and they provided a lighting plan. Our standard is a maximum for fully shielded fixtures, which all of these will be, is 2,600 lumens. You can see here they give us a foot candle measurement, but a foot candle is 1 lumen per square foot. So it's just how it's applied on the site, and you can see that it doesn't ever go over, I believe, 50, 57? Oh, excuse me. But you can see it's very low. And most of it, if you looked at the lighting plan, is concentrated in the courtyard area, which has the building surrounding it. Okay, the request for reduced parking. Our nursing home standard in the Canby Municipal Code is 1 space per 2 residents plus 1 per employee. Excuse me. The applicant has requested that the 51 required parking spaces for memory care facility residents be removed. This is because while they understand the nursing home standards, it is a more broad allocation that we can put on, a variety of senior living uses. In this case specifically, the memory care patients, as a rule, do not drive, they do not own cars, they do not have licenses. So having 51 excess parking spaces in anticipation of these residents driving, it's not realistic. Other than that, they are proposing to meet the parking for the independent senior duplexes. For staff, I'm gonna talk about staff in just 1 second. For outside providers and swing employees, and for visitors. So you can see down here at the total required, if we are counting the 51 spaces, we would require 106 spaces for this property for this use. They are proposing 60. If we omit the memory care resident parking, required would be 55 parking spaces. And again, they are proposing 60. I want to discuss these numbers just a little bit. These numbers were provided to us by the applicant, and we worked extensively with them to understand that they are accurate to their business plan, to their model. This is not their first or only facility. They provided letters from comparable facilities supporting these numbers, some of which staff we were kind of surprised by. So we definitely did have those discussions. The visitors, they're providing 10 spaces, but the industry standard is actually only expected to be 5 for a facility of this size for 102 beds. So we thought that was interesting, but they did give us, they supported all of these numbers with industry information. Okay. The second exception is for access. They are requesting to retain both driveways, and they are requesting a exception to the spacing standards for arterials. So both 13th and Ivy are arterial streets. We discourage access onto arterials. It's unavoidable here. The other thing to note is this lot is 330 by 315 feet. So the access would have had to have some consideration, some sort of exception applied to it, pretty much for any use, for any placement of the driveway on this parcel. All right, a little bit more about the access spacing and why it is configured as it is. So there are existing driveways 10 feet and 110 feet south of the property line. And I hope my color coding helps you here. The green are the property lines. And then you can see the pink driveways just to the south of there. So the applicants placed their driveway 80 feet away from their property line to give a total of 90 feet of space from this existing driveway to the south. They did that in order to still provide sufficient space to the north towards the intersection. And again, a similar situation to the east. There's a local street access 60 feet east of the other property line, the red driveway here. That's a 40-foot wide local access street. And similarly, you can see they brought in their driveway just enough to provide what we would consider safe spacing. It was considered safe by our traffic consultant, and we'll talk more about that, but enough to be safe while still not encroaching too close to the intersection. So again, an exception would be required to be considered regardless of access location due to the configuration and the size of the lot and the fact that these are both arterial streets. The reason we considered retaining these two driveways, we like to only see one access. But for this use in particular, the Department of Health Services and Facilities Planning and Safety, OAR, Oregon Revised Statutes, facilities must have an entry and exit drive that will allow for vehicle circulation without the need for vehicles to back up. The parking configuration is not circular. I think they particularly avoided that to decrease disturbance to the neighbors to the south and east. They keep most of the parking circulation along the streets. But because of that, they need the second driveway. So their emergency vehicles particularly do not have to back up. Okay. So more about the traffic and access safety. The traffic study was completed by Charbonneau Engineering and reviewed by our consulting transportation engineer, Kevin Chewick with DKS. The traffic study analyzed the intersection of 13th and Ivy as well as both proposed accesses. They calculated 21 a.m. peak hour trips and 29 p.m. peak hour trips and 295 daily trips. They applied a 2% background regional trip growth rate, and they also considered trips from projects currently under development in the south of Canby. And as I mentioned before, no safety or intersection capacity issues were identified. Sorry, let me back up. After Kevin and I had this discussion and came to this conclusion, we discussed limiting the access on Ivy Street. And we did go ahead and recommend that as a condition of approval for this project, specifically because of the low trip count this trip count would not necessitate a second access if we didn't have the state law. 295 trips. It might sound like a lot, but in terms of, these calculations, it's a pretty small number in terms of daily trips. So it would only necessitate the one access. And if we made IV right in, right out, we do not believe that it would interfere with emergency vehicles being able to circulate. Because if they're coming north on Ivy, they could, of course, access it. And, in an emergency, they would be able to enter any way that they needed to. Okay, so signage. Signage proposed at the time of conditional use shall be reviewed by the Planning Commission regarding size, height, and location concurrent to this review. So because this is an R1 zone, signage, very, very minimal allowed. But for this use, they are proposing 2 signs. I think that they're most comparable to, maybe a small apartment complex or a multifamily, just sort of a monument sign and an entrance sign. So this is the entrance sign. You can see they're using similar materials to the building. It's integrated into the design of the building, and that'll be placed right at that entrance that faces the intersection. And then they're also proposing a 48 square feet total, but the sign itself is only 4x3. So they're proposing a small freestanding sign closer to the intersection, obviously well within their property still, but probably more readable from the right of way there. Okay, so we did receive correspondence for this project. We received comments from our city engineer, and those have been incorporated into our conditions of approval. We also received public comments, one from Donald Chambers, who's a resident in the area, was worried about safety and accessibility at the intersection of South Ivy Street and Southeast 13th. And even though we did not receive written correspondence, we did receive several phone calls also concerned about this. It's a legitimate concern, and I completely understand as South Canby develops, these intersections are going to see increased capacity, increased movement. But we did require a very thorough traffic study, and this intersection is not close to failing, and it will not fail because of this project. The second public comment we received was from Zach Fogg, who is VP of Operations for Marquise Company. He questioned the need for an assisted living facility in the area, given the presence of Hope Village. Again, while this may be a legitimate question, it's outside of the scope of planning staff and planning commission to consider the economic factors which drive development in terms of specific land use review. This is a question that maybe we could discuss, at a workshop or, in broader terms of what the city may or may not need, but in terms of determining whether this application is appropriate, this is just outside of our scope. Okay, so conditions of approval. The standard conditions of approval would apply in terms of design review projects, utility installation, storm drainage, frontage improvements on Southeast 13th and South Ivy Street. The access from South Ivy Street must be right in, right out only, and we need to see that revision before any site work can commence. We need a type 1 site plan, and that needs to have minor revisions to the bicycle parking in particular. They're not showing enough bicycle parking, but they did state they could provide it, and there's ample area in the location. So that can be covered under a type 1 site plan. And the sign permit application, if you decide that those signs are appropriate, we would need the follow-up sign application to approve them. And signage for the 5 designated visitor parking spaces. And so, based on that, based on the application submitted and the facts, findings, and conclusions of the staff report, planning staff recommend that Planning Commission approve application DR 2003 and CUP 2002, subject to the identified conditions of approval included in the staff report. Now I can have questions.
Yeah, I guess we'll go in there. So to be clear, the Marquise Company, are they connected to Hope Village? Is that Hope Village?
Yes.
All right. So I know Hope Village has a project going. They're expanding towards the river, correct?
Mm-hmm.
This would be a completely different company designing this project. They're not
Correct.
in relation. All right. Yeah. And the signage, seemed pretty similar to what like Township Village already has or Tofty Farms already has in front of those neighborhoods.
Mm-hmm.
But, yeah. All right. I guess that's biggest questions I had.
Great. Thank you.
Commissioner Mills.
Yes, Mr. Chair. I have a couple questions. The first one to staff is, as part of the design review process, was building mass considered?
Building mass is only considered in the code really in terms of length. And they did address that by, I did not point it out on the site plan, but there is sort of a secondary entrance with a gazebo that kind of breaks up the massing. That's a really good question.
I asked that in context of, as I understand it, this is still currently R1 and the CR overlay has been removed, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So we're basically talking about, is this compatible with R1 as designed? Yeah. And that, to me, that's the focus of the design review. I appreciate the attention to science, but to me, the far more critical issue is the mass of this building seems completely out of character with the R1 that's in the vicinity and indeed the R1 that's directly to the south. Mr. Chair, I have another question, but I don't want to dominate again. I'll let you take the turn.
You forge right ahead.
Yes, on page 5 of the staff report, it talks about the parking spaces, which you outlined and addressed, but I'm having a hard time understanding the arithmetic. When I look at the columns as they add up, they seem to add up to more like 66, not 60. That table that is there on the right for proposed seems to add up to 66, not 60. And I think indeed the staff recommendations in the back or conditions have more than 60. Can you clarify?
There's a total of 60 proposed.
So 16 and 33 and 7 and 10 are not additive?
He's correct. It comes up to 66.
Yes. Not 60.
Brianna, the proposed is 5 on the, you have required as 5 on visitor and the proposed
is 5. It's the visitors. Yeah, I apologize.
And I think there was also some double counting going on, as I recall, for visitor spaces that was going to consume some of the condominium spaces.
Yeah.
As I recall, that there was a double count there that I think was one of the reasons that, correct me if I'm wrong, you increased your count requirement to, I'm guessing, again, there's a lot of pages here, but I'm recalling it was like 65.
Our requirement is 55 if we were to take out the memory care consideration.
How do you get there? I don't see how you get to 55 when you've got a proposed here that says it should be 66.
I'm just looking at my math. Okay, so 8, 33, 7, and 5 is 54.
Well, that's not the proposed, though. It's 10 is the proposed.
For visitors?
I'm offering is that what you have in your document adds up to 66. And if it's different than that, I think that needs to be clearly identified and summarized.
Okay, I copied this straight from the document. Is this is not the same?
I'm looking at the document that you provided me,
Mm-hmm.
and that adds up to 66.
Which
So-
column?
The proposed column adds up to 66.
It's because I double counted the visitors.
Because they were consuming visitor spaces in the form of some parking in the driveways of the condos.
Yes. So that's the mistake that we've identified. Excuse me.
But if you stay at 55, I think you're accepting that mistake. I could be confused on this very easily, so please accept that I'm coming from a point of confusion, but I'm not.
No,
it's not
I understand. It
defined
is
this document.
confusing. So if we lowered this to 5, then we would be proposed and required 55.
No, that's 49, 56, 61. If you take out 5 from the visitors, that still adds up to 61. The math is
Yes.
specious.
So in the required column, that all those numbers add up to 104 spaces, not 106.
Okay.
And if you remove, and as was just previously mentioned, if you remove the 5 spaces from proposed, that brings it down to 61, not 60.
That is
Thank you.
correct.
We went over and over this with the applicant and it's still confusing. So I appreciate that. So we are 1 under what we would require. Mhm.
Okay. Did that answer your?
I guess I'm going to just say that I think the document should reflect what is needed, and if there's a point of confusion, it should be amended. We planning commissioners come at this as citizen representatives, not experts in planning, and we have to read and accept what's here, and if what is here is wrong or confusing, you kind of create a hopeless situation for us.
I apologize.
So you will amend that? Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Could I add something? Just on this, as I'm looking at the duplex, required 8, proposed 16, because what you have is you have 8 garages, and then you have that area in front of the garage. So technically, you've got 16 parking spaces. I don't know if that helps the discussion, but in other words, you've got 8 spaces for the garage and 8 spaces in front of the garage where you can
Right.
park your car. So there's your 16.
But I think
Right.
if you were talking about R1.5, which would be comparable to this, although we are R1, I think you'd be requiring 2 places per residence.
For R1, residential single family, yes.
And just a point of clarification, that is correct, that there's only 1 space required for the duplexes. So that is an extra space in front of each garage. So the 16 is correct.
Right, that's right.
I guess I don't see that as possible, though, because if you have people parked in their garage and a visitor comes and parks in their driveway, that just doesn't work. What do they want to leave? It doesn't make sense.
I mean, it's designated for their visitors. So if they have visitors over.
But I'm saying that, yes, that would be for their visitors, but if they're marked, they should be therefore part of the condo. Those condos should have 2 spaces per condo, not 1. If the second space is designated visitor, is that for all visitors or just visitors to that individual condo? Because I'm reading this that would be a visitor space, and I don't think that that's kosher. I think it has to be a condo space, which can be used at the discretion of the owner.
It is considered for use of the condo, but it's not considered required as a second parking space. It's considered extra parking. So while in effect it will be used by visitors of the condos, it's considered extra visitor parking. It's not considered required for the duplexes.
But the duplex has to have access to get out. And if it's a visitor space and you're allowing visitors to park there, you're blocking the condo. You can't, that doesn't make sense.
Those are for those individual guests of that resident, though. Brianna, you want to clarify the visitor spaces versus, I think we're getting caught up on 2 different items here. Visitor spaces versus, it would be no different than having somebody come over to your house. They're going to coordinate with you if you've double parked. I mean, that's the situation there.
I think that what Commissioner Mills is saying is that if you have, say, independent senior duplex number 1 has and a visitor, and he parks down in senior independent duplex number 8. I mean, and they want to get out of their garage, that makes no sense.
Why would they do that?
Well, because of limited parking. I mean,
but you wouldn't park in front of someone else's garage.
But if you were coming to visit the facility, and it was, that's where I wanted to make sure that those are not marked as visitor spaces. Those
They're not.
in front of the condos, those should not. Okay, then
They're not.
Then I'm okay with that. But I recall reading that in their count, some of those were counted as.
There will be 5 marked visitor spaces in the primary parking area for the facility.
Okay.
Yeah. So what you're saying is basically there's going to be 50 spots aside from the independent duplexes. Is there anything mandating like that or any guarantee that in the future these condos won't be rented out to younger, more capable people?
Yeah,
Like,
these are not condos. These are memory care beds. So it's a room with 2 beds in it, and all the facilities are shared and staffed.
I don't
So
think
these
that's
residents. I'm sorry.
I think he was asking about the individual apartment units, as I understood it.
Yeah, no, the not just the independent duplexes. They got their separate parking, but
Okay, sorry.
so would it be like I guess they'd be patients then. They wouldn't necessarily be residents.
That's right. I'll let the applicant talk about the specifics, but they are
it
not
isn't-
independent.
Yeah.
Mr. Commissioner Heeb, can I just add to that? The conditional use permit is specific to the memory care, and that's the specific use there. So if they wanted to change that use, they'd have to come back in for additional entitlements.
Mhm.
And that's going to be conditioned as part of this application.
All right.
okay. Any more questions, Commissioner Mills? Commissioner Heeb, do you have any other?
No, sir.
So-
There's
This is Commissioner Mills. I had my mic off for a moment. I was just going to ask one final question to confirm how far in the future the traffic studies were declaring these 2 cuts and the loading, the trips per day would be okay. I guess my concern is that these cuts are okay now, but I'm worried about 2 decades from now.
The study, I don't know if it went 2 decades in advance. I'll let the applicant address how far in advance they went, but the 2% growth factor was applied. That's kind of just a standard that would be applied to any project in the area because that reflects the growth that we have seen in the past. And that's kind of a best approximation.
Do you know how far out they went?
No, I don't. That's what I want the applicant to answer for you, but I know that that's the growth rate that they
Okay.
applied.
Thank you very much.
Any other comments?
Chair Savory, I have a question, Chair Savory.
Okay.
It's Larry. Okay, when was the traffic study taken? Was it done before the COVID or during the COVID shutdown?
It was done during COVID using, not using COVID specific data though. The traffic consultant is on here tonight, so I'm sure he can go into detail.
Well,
Sorry.
Okay, that's fine. I'll ask him. And I have problems with the parking too, but I'll ask the applicant about that.
Any other questions?
I have a couple. This is Jason.
Hey, Commissioner Patton?
My first question, and most of this is regarding the traffic for the intersection. It's mentioned that there is a right in, right out. It also mentions a pork chop. I am curious, does that refer to some sort of island or barrier that will block people from cutting across to turn left into that entryway?
That's correct.
Okay. And is that going to be mountable for emergency vehicles?
I am going to work with the applicant as well as Public Works because we do not have a standard drawing for the city. So we will have to design it with the applicant for it to be, safe for the specific use. A mountable curb, yes, will be definitely suggested.
Okay. Another question I have is regarding that IV entrance. Was there the ability to move it further away from the intersection of Ivy and 13th, or was that restricted because it would then make it too close to the next property's driveway?
To the driveway to the south, correct.
Okay, that answers that. In the drawing, it shows the planting bed being cut off at an angle. Is that how it will actually be done, or will that planting bed go straight across to match up with the sidewalk being straight?
I think it will transition into whatever is existing there, which I believe it has that substantial landscaping strip.
Okay, because according to the Google here, there is a sidewalk right at the edge of the street. There is not a planting bed in between.
There's not a planting bed.
The sidewalk. So I wasn't sure how that transition is being made.
It'll be made to transition into whatever is existing.
Okay. And then finally, in these sort of plans for the future, is there any sort of provisions put into these things so that if this intersection ends up needing a right turn lane, that there is the ability to install a right-hand lane into this intersection at this property?
It was not considered because it was not a capacity consideration for this project. If it would eventually be required, they would be losing some parking and some landscaping. So that's kind of a decision the city would have to make.
So I guess my question and this might be because I'm new, is there the ability to build these sort of things into these requirements? So, because unfortunately throughout the city, we have this problem where those sort of things are not taken into consideration now. And then 5-10 years later, all of a sudden it's like, hey, we need to put in a different lane or we need to do a sidewalk and it requires a ton of extra work. Is there the ability to build these sort of things into these plans so that it makes it easier for the city to do those expansions?
So those capacity considerations are more long-term, and they are built into the TSP, the Transportation System Plan. So if a right turn lane was called out as being required on Ivy in the next 10, 15, 20 years, it would be in that document, and it's not. So
Okay.
that's what we have to go on.
And
Okay.
Brianna has the right-of-way dedication according to the city engineer. It's appropriate for this section. Of
Correct.
Is that correct?
Correct. Yes. Yes, they are dedicating what is appropriate to the capacity now.
I have a couple. I'm sorry.
I did have one other thing on the chart on the check sheet on page 27 of the document. It shows that they have circled 100 under on meeting the parking compliance. They've circled 100%. I'm assuming that was circled as 100% after the exception was given to them, not based on what we would require and what they are asking the exception for.
Correct. They should not be getting points for that.
Okay.
So Brianna, just so I'm clear in my mind in visualizing this is Commissioner Savory. If you're coming north to south, right there at the intersection of 13th and Ivy, to enter the facility, they'd have to make a left-hand turn from Ivy onto 13th to enter the facility. Is that correct?
Mhm.
Okay. I just wanted to be sure because there's no, and I don't recall, is there a left-hand turn lane there already existing?
On going southbound?
No, going southbound on
Yes.
Ivy. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Great. That's all. And I think, sometime back, a year, maybe Mr. Boatwright will remember, we're building a roundabout
Mm-hmm.
somewhere in that area for the development further on down past Hope Village. Is that correct? Is there a roundabout plan down there?
Yes.
Is that down where? I'm
It's
not
to
visualizing.
the west.
It's to the, it would be to the, well, I don't know if it's really west, but it's closer to Goods Bridge, John. It's down there near the pump station.
Right. And how is that going to, that roundabout down there, would that have any positive or negative effects on the traffic flow into this facility?
I don't think so myself. I think it's far enough away that it shouldn't be a problem.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I was having a hard time visualizing that. I don't get down to that end of the town very much, but yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay. Any more questions from commissioners for staff? Good job, Brianna. Thank you.
I guess this is Commissioner Mills. I'm going back to the left, the turn in and on the 13th Street entrance. As you were discussing, Commissioner Savory, coming south on Ivy, turning east on 13th, and then having to make a right-hand turn.
Right.
I guess that works. Yeah. What I got confused was I think somebody asked if there was a left-hand turn lane there, and there's no center lane that's in existence through the length of 13th. Only at the intersection there's a left-hand turn aisle for that area.
Yeah.
Okay. That's all. Just trying to get my head cleared up here.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Any more questions for staff? Okay. Let's move along to the applicant. Who do we have representing the applicant?
Hi, my name's Edward Rodolescu. I'm with the design team, and I'm representing Daniel and Petronella Donovan. They're the owners of the property. And also on, we have Richard Georgescu. He's our civil engineer, and Gary Spanovich with traffic. He is our traffic consultant. I just want to, I'm gonna let Gary speak about the questions that came up with regards to circulation and traffic. I know there were some questions for him. I just wanted to,
Sure, happy to.
I just wanted to clarify a couple of things first. Number one, 1 second. Let me see if I can get the video here to work.
It's
There we go.
down in the very left. There you
Everybody,
go.
Okay,
You got it.
excuse me for just a moment, but part of the thing that we have to have for the people watching on TV is identify yourself and your address, please.
okay. My name is Edward Rodolescu, and my address is 919 Northeast 19th Avenue, Suite 155, and that's in Portland, Oregon, 97232.
Okay, thank you.
The couple of things I wanted to clarify. Number one, the parking count, other than double counting those visitor spots, is correct. We are going to have 61 total spaces, even though 55 was what was determined that was required. We do have 61 spaces, so if we subtract the 5 extra that were counted, it does come out to 61, and we are proposing that. The designated visitor spots will be in the main parking area. I don't know if that screen, if Brianna's screen is still up, but they're not going to be allowed to park. Basically, the duplexes are acting as, like a home would, where with a garage and a driveway. So only visitors visiting that individual who lives there would be parking in front of the garage. The designated visitor spots will be somewhere near the main entrance door of the main building. And we'll designate 5 or more spots there for the visitors. I did also want to talk about the use of the building because it is not all entirely memory care. The memory care is on the ground floor. We cannot have memory care units on the second floor. However, the residents on the second floor will not own cars or drive to the site either. It's almost the same. They just don't have the dementia diagnosis. They are a high acuity elderly that will be living on that second floor. But so the total counts actually is 49 beds on the second floor and 55 beds on the ground level. And then we have the 8 condo units, which would be the duplex units. So I just wanted to clarify that it's not all 104 memory care beds. It's a mixture of memory care and of nursing home. As far as I did want to point out the curved areas that you see there that somebody mentioned. I forget who asked the question about the curvature once you enter onto the site. So the driveways will align and be perpendicular as you cross the sidewalk there. The curve actually starts once you get onto the property, and those are the required radius for a fire truck or emergency vehicle to be able to turn onto the property and then make the turn into the driveway. So that the curve will not actually extend out into the street or over the sidewalk. It starts when it gets onto the property. Gary, if you want to, if
Sure.
there's any more questions for me, or if Gary wants to address the traffic items first, and then we can answer questions.
This is Commissioner Patton. I have one question real quick. You mentioned that the individuals living in the main facility will not need cars. Is it written into the contract when they enter, like they live in the facility, that they are not allowed to have a car?
Yes. So the residents that will be living there they won't be able to drive because of disabilities or age, or for the memory care because of their diagnoses. But it is in the contract that they will not have cars parked at the site or be utilizing personal vehicles.
Okay.
It also is going to be in the contract, and as part of our licensing, the duplexes. I know there was a question about, well, what if, the applicant rents one of the duplexes to a citizen not related to the care business in the duplexes, because the entire site is going to be licensed as a care facility. We will not be able to rent those units out to other individuals. They have to be admitted as part of the care facility to be able to have those units.
Did that answer your question?
And I do want to clarify that the residents of the duplex units will be the only residents allowed to utilize personal vehicles. So that's why they have their own driveway and their own garage space.
Yeah, I just wanted to get clarification on that, because when it was mentioned that the ground floor is the memory care and then the upper floor is not memory care, the comment was made that the folks in memory care would not be able to drive. But if the entire facility is not memory care, then that leaves a loophole for people who live on the second floor to be able to have vehicles, which then would throw this whole parking voodoo off. And so I just wanted to make sure that that is not something that will pop up once the facility is built.
Right. Yeah. No residents living in the main building will drive or own cars that are parked at the site. That's part of the level of care that Petronella and Daniel will be providing, but also as part of their contract.
Any further questions on that, Commissioner Padden?
Nope, I'm good.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'll try and address some of the traffic issues. Excuse me, Gary Spanovich, traffic consultant with Charbonneau Engineering, and I also have Mary Kate Otto on the call here. And if there's any detailed questions on the analysis, we can answer it. On the issue of the long range time period, Canby, of course, has a ESP, Transportation System Plan, and it looks out to 2030. That's their year. And as part of that, they have the way you do traffic modeling, you break a geographic area into travel analysis zones, and then you make predictions on trips based on employment and population. And so we know how many trips will come in and out of the zone in question, which is where the memory care location is. And that's TAZ 156. We'll have 131 trips in and 66 trips out in 2030. So we use those numbers and we work with that to come up with the projection. And then on the, and there's plenty of capacity, I guess, to answer your question. And then the other is the pre-COVID or post-COVID. There's a lot of, with traffic analysis, it is a little bit unsure how the future is going to go, because what's happened with the post-COVID is school trips, for example, have completely fallen off in all urban areas because, you have hybrid learning and you have, internet learning. And so you don't have those school trips anymore. But what we did was we had a count, 2019, right there, almost at that intersection, Ivy and 13th. So we had 2019 count AM/PM, And then we did a 2020 count AM, PM. And so we had a really good set of numbers for post-COVID and pre-COVID. And then we made some assumptions on how that would evolve. And we looked at a 2022 opening of this facility. And then we juxtapose those numbers to come up with what we expect will happen in 2022. And we assumed as part of that a regional growth rate, which was recommended to us by DKS. We would prefer to see not necessarily a right turn in and a right turn out on Ivy. We would rather see two access points, but we can live with the right turn in, the right turn out. But I really want to emphasize it's important that right turn in and out pork chop has to accommodate a fire truck, because fire trucks come for fire, obviously, but they also come for as an ambulance and for 911 calls. And a number of years ago, I did a I was hired by the city of Fairview to do a parking study, because they had a smart development out there, which means skinny streets and a lot of the traffic parked on the roads in front of the houses. And then so you had a emergency where a fellow had a heart attack. They called the fire truck. He couldn't get to the house because the streets were too skinny, too smart. And so just make sure that pork chop is designed to completely accommodate fire trucks. Otherwise, you might want to reconsider just a normal access point. So I hope that helps.
Yes. Any questions for Mr. Spanovich? Okay, hearing none. Does that conclude your presentation for the, okay?
Chair, this is Petronella. I just want to make one comment to maybe ease some of those questions about the parking. As far as the residents go that would be living in our facility, these residents that probably would have, would be driving probably won't need our care. And so there would be no way that the residents that we would be taking care of would have a license to drive. I just wanted to make sure that that was clear and everybody, we're all on the same page.
Okay, thank you. Any more testimony from the applicant? Thank you very much, Petronella.
Yeah, only one thing. I want to share your screen if it's possible. These drawings was preliminary, and something like access or a second share. Okay, right on the intersection here, where the architect is proposing the entrance, the pedestrian entrance. Right here, it's a lighting pole. I mean, the for signals here. And probably we have to move left and right this one to accommodate, but everybody has to understand those are preliminary drawings. But in terms of construction drawings, we can, not the basic, not everything on parking lots or everything, but this entrance will be moved.
Okay.
It is only for pedestrian.
Okay. Brianna, do you have any comment on that?
Is that the traffic light?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And we have to move only for pedestrian, probably left, or right, however, or
I would recommend moving the path and not the traffic light.
Yeah, Brianna, what I wanted to say is I think what we're going to do there is do kind of similar to what we did closer to our building. If you look at Richard's drawing, if you zoom back out a little bit, Richard, that half round there, I think we're going to propose maybe like a little plaza area there where pedestrians can sit. Instead of moving the pole, we'll probably widen that area out and make like a little plaza area at the intersection there. Something more pedestrian friendly than just jogging the walkway around the pole.
That
Yeah.
sounds wonderful. I want to remind you of the 60% impervious surface coverage.
yeah, no problem, no problem. But what I want to point it here, some little stuff will be moved left and right, not parking lots, not building, not nothing. But when I'll start the design, I have to, to move around some little stuff to accommodate the existing conditions.
Yeah, that's why we follow up with a type 1 site plan and also pre-construction meetings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to be clarified for all the attendants here, commissioners and everything. Will be something different here and there.
Man, I don't know about the other commissioners, but now I'm getting I was fairly comfortable with how the presentation went until we started getting a little squishy on some of where these polls were going. I would prefer to see something, this is the way it's going to be, and without too much guesswork going on. There seems to be this seems to be a pretty loose end, so to speak. I don't know if anybody else feels that way, but certainly I do.
Chair Savory,
Yes.
this is Commissioner Boatwright. That parcel is not developed, has no sidewalks or anything. All there is a curb and a light pole at that corner. I think if the city makes them build the street like all up to code, I don't think we have to really worry about that part of it, to be honest with you.
Okay.
As long as it's stressed that the city codes will be followed, because it hasn't been a problem on the other 3 corners of that intersection in the past. They'll have a planter strip for the trees. I think it's across the street at Hope Village. I don't think there's a planter strip. Back then we didn't require that, but on that side of the street there's a planter strip that they have street trees on the south side of Ivy. And if it's built to code, it should blend right in with I can't think of the name of the estates right there on that will be east of it, but
That is a
Dinsmore.
Dinsmore Estates, right?
Right. Okay.
Anyway, I just thought I'd throw that in there to you, because down Ivy there, it'll have to add sidewalks and the planter strip or whatever the city code is. So I don't know. It doesn't look like that's all into this particular drawing, but this, as he said, is not the final drawing.
Okay.
If that
All right.
helps.
Thank you, Commissioner Boatwright. Okay. Brianna, do we have, or Don, do we have any other proponents that would like to speak in favor of this project?
Not that I know of.
Okay. Do we have any opponents that would like to speak? No? Yes, no?
I just like, this is Bill Vermillion, 1441 Southeast Ivy, Unit 503, live in Hope Village. I'm the president of the Residents Association.
Okay.
I just wanted to clarify, Brianna, you said that Hope Village and Marquee are the same, and they're not. Hope Village owns the property. Marquee operates the assisted living, and, well, they actually built the assisted living and the skilled nursing facility and the memory care. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
And then Chairman Savoy?
It's Savory. There's an R.
Savory, sorry. Savory. So a decision is made on a plan that's not final. Was I understanding that correctly?
Well, that's what they're asking us to do.
I can clarify that. So these preliminary site plans are as final as they can be without things like utility lines being run. The moving of a traffic light, that is something kind of drastic sounding, but as you can see, we kind of came up with a quick solution of we will alter the path. So these small revisions are taken care of with a type 1 site plan, making sure that any subsequent changes do still meet code. A site 1 has to meet all standards. There's no discretion. And also we have pre-construction meetings. So there's 2 more checks, I would say, where planning will make sure that it does meet municipal code.
Okay, and then may I continue? Okay.
Yes, please do.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So when it was originally proposed, it was going to be primarily assisted living with a small memory care. Now it seems to have changed in the process.
Yeah, I would like the applicant actually to clarify that, especially with the first floor, second floor. If you have like numbers of beds, that would be helpful for everybody.
Yeah, I can clarify that. Petronella, if you want to add to it too, but basically what we're proposing is 55 ground floor units. They will be private units, so 55 total ground floor beds. And our memory care will be limited to the ground floor. And then on the second floor, we're proposing 49 units, also private units, so 49 beds of our residential care facility. And that's, residents that don't necessarily have a dementia diagnosis. They will be, as Petronella mentioned earlier, high acuity. They could be hospice residents on the second floor. They could be injured, disabled, or just elderly. Could be a 90-year-old resident, could be a 65-year-old resident, but they need care for day-to-day things, brushing their teeth, changing somebody to do their laundry, feeding. So those types of residents. We're not proposing independent living. So if Petronella, if you want to add to that, but I just wanted to clarify that it's 55 units on the ground floor and 49 units on the second floor.
So as far as adding anything to that is, you pretty much got the numbers right. We're also getting approval from the state of Oregon on these. And so we cannot have anybody that has a diagnosis of dementia on a second floor. And so that's why all of our memory care is on the first floor. And I think, Eddie, you hit it right on. As far as everybody's going to have a need, that's why they're there. Going from, maybe some of them have Parkinson's, or they have a Lewy body disease, or an enhanced care. All of that we would be, helping out with. So nobody that's independent that pretty much could do everything on their own, this would not be the facility for them. Does that answer your question, William?
I think so. I was wondering when you made the switch from what was primarily an assisted living, at least the first time I heard it presented, to the memory care and what caused the switch?
I don't think we've ever switched it. We've always had the memory care. We actually had the long-term care. So we had independent was the cottages, and then the memory, the assisted living, and then memory care. I've always had that vision, just because if a resident came in and they needed assisted living, and then maybe had a stroke or something else happened, and a year went by, and now they have memory care, I did not want them to move. And so I definitely wanted that, continuum of care, if that makes any sense.
Oh, it makes good sense. But Petronella, when you first presented it, it was primarily assisted living with a smaller memory care.
So I don't remember the exact numbers when we presented it, but I always wanted to have a continuum of care.
Yes.
Yeah, that might have been at the neighborhood meeting. That was very early on in the stages of.
It was at the neighborhood meeting, you're right.
Right. Yeah, we were just, it was early on in the stages of putting the building together. I did want to mention that the building is broken up into two masses with a kind of like a narrower section connecting the two buildings. And in between the two buildings is a courtyard, and that's the secured outdoor area for the memory care residents to use. So I just wanted to touch a little bit on the fact that it's two building masses. I know on the site plan it's hard to see there, but somebody asked a question about massing, and then also we've broken up the building exterior using offsets in building elevations and roof lines to mimic more of a multifamily development rather than just one block of building, and addressing the long exterior walls.
So, Chairman Savoy?
Yes.
Another question. I'm trying to, I heard what you said, Brianna, as far as going ahead, and when Zach Fogg had made kind of a written comment to you that was outside, I think what you said is your area to pursue as a planning. And I'm interested then in how commissioners look at existing properties which are basically having similar needs and are pretty well close. Now, if I heard Petronella right, she said you already have a certification from the state for a need for this. So, but I'm wondering about going ahead and paying more attention to an existing facility that's been a good neighbor to Canby, certainly a good neighbor to Hope Village.
Are you asking me directly?
Yes, sir.
Oh, okay. Well, good. I've been on the planning commission for a good number of years now, and while we're allowed to look at the rules, the regulations, the things that LCDC puts before us, we're pretty constrained. The economic impact on an existing business is not within our purview. It's if somebody put down there on the 7-Eleven down there on Ivy and 99, and across the street they put a plaid pantry, even though they're competitors, that would be outside of our purview, as I understand it. So does that answer your question?
It certainly does. Thank you very much. Thank you for giving me the time.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, are there, Brianna, do you know if we have any other people that are either opponents or neutral on this matter?
I don't see any on the call here.
Okay, then unless any of the commissioners have questions for any of the participants so far, then I will close the public portion of this hearing, and we will move along to making a decision. If there are any other questions, commissioners.
This is Commissioner Patton.
Yes. Commissioner Pat.
In here on page, and this is for Brianna, on page 6 of the packet that we got, it says findings. The applicant has applied for an exception to the designated parking standards for their nursing home land use. The development would consist of 102 memory care patient beds. Is that something that needs to be reconsidered? Because now it's not 102 memory care patient beds. It's now 55 memory care patient beds and 49 other beds.
Yeah, I will be frank. I was surprised by the nomenclature used, but it seems like we are still getting to the same end result. I would recommend, because the applicant has stated it's in the contract, that we have a condition of approval, that it is indeed in the contract, and let's get a copy of that contract.
Yes, and I hope people can appreciate, I hate to be naggy about this, but it's one thing to say in this meeting that these people will not have vehicles, but it's better to have it actually in writing, because I have seen too many times where that's been said in a meeting, and then all of a sudden there's not furniture in the plan, or these apartments aren't affordable, and so on and so forth. And so I would prefer that it actually be written in stone so that this does not come up for future people to have to fuss with.
Yeah, we will add a condition of approval.
Thank you.
Any other comments from any of the commissioners?
Mr. Chair, this is Commissioner Mills.
Yes.
I guess I have a comment, and I guess I'll kind of lay out where I'm at on this. I'm very uncomfortable with the fact, with the mass of this building. The applicant has said that they've taken steps to make it mimic a multifamily structure. And it's a 56,000 square feet structure that's trying to look like an apartment building, and it's sitting in R1. And that doesn't add up to me. I can't go along with that.
Okay. Any other commissioners? Commissioner Boatwright, you have any thoughts on this at this time?
Yeah, the parking just doesn't work out for me. I'm concerned about the visitor parking for the people that do live and can drive. This has always been a concern for this particular parcel, unfortunately, is the access from and to Ivy and 13th. I believe that's why it wasn't developed before, when they tried to put single family homes in there. And I still see a problem with that, especially being right across the street from Ackerman, which is not busy right now, and they've changed it, but you never know when that school's going to open back up. The building is, I have a problem with the size of the building as well. It looks nice, at least the front of it, what they did show us looked good, but we didn't really see that much of it. I live right over here, and I understand that the issues with this parcel, because it's the last one to be developed in that whole right around that corner there. So it'd be nice to have something nice looking built there, but I worry about that. I worry about the parking. And this not being a complete memory care facility, even though the ones on the top floor may have issues where they can't drive. It kind of bothers me that it wasn't laid out to us the right way to begin with. Now, if it is approved, there definitely needs to be, in addition to the conditions of approval, that the people on the second floor and the first floor of the big building cannot own cars. That's all.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Heed, do you have any thoughts that you would like to put forth at this time on this matter?
Yeah. Yeah, pretty much same thing. I don't really want to see people saying they don't drive and then stashing their cars over at the swimming pool or at the adult center at the school. And I just would see that happening if they were driving elderly. But, yeah, and then I don't know. And yeah, another note. Yeah, I do happen to know Bill Vermillion outside of here, but we've never discussed this. I just figured I'd make that known. This is I didn't know he was going to be in this meeting either, but I just figured I'd make that known.
I think you're good on that. Okay. I will, at this time, any other commissioners that would like to make a comment on or have a thought on this before we move on to making a decision? Okay. Then I will entertain a motion to approve. Hold on a second. I lost my note there for just a second. I will entertain a motion to approve the request for conditional use and design review approval for senior living and memory care facility with 102 beds and 4 independent living duplexes with associated parking and site improvements, DR 20-03 and CUP 20-02 memory care facility. I'm sure that there are a couple of amendments to that. Would anybody like to make a motion to approve? Commissioner Boatwright, Commissioner Mills, Commissioner Patton.
This is Commissioner Boatwright. No.
This is
No?
Commissioner Mills. I could not oppose it.
Pardon me, I didn't understand you, Commissioner Mills.
I could not. I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. I'm not going to make a proposal.
Okay. Commissioner Heap.
No, I think that the occupancy is a little high for the property as it sits, so I won't be making a motion either.
Okay. Let's see, Commissioner Patton. How say you?
So I guess my concerns regarding this are the change in the classification of the occupancy type. And I have some concerns regarding the traffic at that intersection. I appreciate the gentleman's, I believe it was Gary, using the TSP, but considering our TSP runs out in less than 10 years, and we have not yet seen how the growth of the city that we've had in the last 5 years has lined up with what was planned, I have some real concerns regarding that intersection and getting people in and out through there. So I don't know in these situations if we are able to send this back to have it revisited with those things in mind to come back to this board. This is all new for me as a new commissioner, so I'm curious as to how this normally works.
I can address and clarify what the commissioner said in terms of the traffic. We can't go out any further than 2030 because that's the best numbers we've got, and that adheres to state law, state land use law, LCDC requirements. Now, on the issue of, we did look at over the last 7 years how the traffic increased on 13th and how it increased on Ivy. And we have the ADT on both those streets. And so over the last 7 years on 13th, we've had a 6.4% yearly increase. So roughly 6% a year. And on Ivy, we've had a 3.4% yearly increase per year, or 3%. So that's what it's been the last, say, 7 years.
Thank you. Brianna?
Yes.
Okay, got your back. There you go. I think that since no one is prepared to make a motion to approve, that at this time it will be denied. And
So you have to make a motion to deny, and
okay,
kind of the same.
but I can't do that. So as chair,
Here,
Larry,
Savory, this is Commissioner Boatwright. I make a motion to deny.
do I have a second? Do I have a second on that?
Mr. Chair, this is Commissioner Mills. I'll second.
Okay, all in favor of denying the request for conditional use and design review approval for senior living and memory care facility, say aye.
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 Okay, thank you very much. We'll send it back to the drawing board then, folks. Thank you, Commissioner Mills. Okay, Brianna, can we have you back here for a second?
Yep, I'm here.
Okay, so since it's been denied, do we go back and do the final decision on that as well as a denial?
No, there is an appeal period. Once that appeal period closes, the decision will be final. If
Okay.
the applicant chooses to appeal, it will go to City Council.
Okay. So the next item on the agenda is items of interest from the planning staff to give us some guidance for the next, for the future. Would that be, yes.
Commissioner Savory, thank you. I just wanted to give a few updates briefly. Staff is drilling down to a further degree on our vacant buildable lands review for residential and employment lands. There's a lot of growth happening in the city, and I'm sure you guys have all seen that. There's kind of a rapid reduction of the land base in the city, and we're trying to get our hands around what that is. And that would be in context of the housing needs assessment, which we'll be continuing to work on over the next year plus, which is due in December of 2022. But we'll be doing that along with an economic opportunity assessment for employment lands that will start back up in July. It was put on hold due to COVID. And so those two things are going to be happening to reporting back to the Planning Commission. Will be coming back to you at some point, giving you guys information on the housing needs assessment, but just letting you know that's one of those radar screen items for us at this point, is trying to keep tabs on the future of Canby. And part of that is DLCD has a mandate of a 20-year housing supply. Currently, the city does not have that. And so looking at those situations about how to be compliant in the future with the comprehensive plan update that's anticipated starting in 2022.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
We have a meeting on 4/26. Is that correct? Yeah.
Yes, it is.
Okay. Hear from the voice of authority there, Lainey. So thank you so much. Do any of the commissioners have something that they would like to talk to, direct to the staff? Okay. Then at this time, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you, Commissioner Mills. Thank you very much. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. Have a great evening. It's supposed to be beautiful tomorrow. So Jason, you can get out there and continue your gardening, and Commissioner Mills can get out on his bike, and et cetera, et cetera. And I can play with my granddaughters some more. So everybody have a great evening and a great day tomorrow. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.